I'm Traveling John, and I'm going to travel and sketch. Join me on the adventure. This is the beginning of a new series of travel and sketch adventures we had in Europe. Over a period of 4 weeks, we traveled through 11 different countries. Within some of these countries, we visited large cities and in other places, small towns. They are all listed in the bold text on the map. We started our travel and sketch adventures exploring the wonderful historic Copenhagen in Denmark. This is our first day in Europe, and we're exploring the royal gardens of Copenhagen. They're beautiful, especially right now with the sun coming out. Earlier in the day, it was a little bit, I want to say cool and drizzly, but now it's absolutely gorgeous, and the flowers are out here. It's that time of year when things are really blooming. So we're enjoying our time very much. And what I have done is I put together a vignette of photographs to share with you that we've taken throughout this wonderful city. So I hope you enjoy that. Within the vignette of photographs and videos you just saw, there was a small portion of it that was a video of us traveling in a tour canal boat alongside the Royal Palace. And there was also the Royal Palace Bridge that went to the entry of the palace. And I was very impressed with that part of Copenhagen. And so once we were done with the canal tour, I ran back and I took a photograph of both the entry to the palace and the gates and also the bridge. And there were some beautiful little like fishing boats that were docked alongside the river or the canal. So I decided that is going to make a really good sketch, and that's what I'm going to attempt to do, an ink line on canvas, and that's the next step in this video. So that's coming up. I began this illustration work with a light, very thin ink line instead of pencil this time. There's so much detail on this bridge with the railing, and I just decided that that would be the best way to go. So I'm using very heavy, thick line now to emphasize parts of the bridge. But of course I'm not going to use those thick lines when I get into doing other parts of the bridge. The detail couldn't support that, of course. So now I'm going into emphasizing that wonderful, ornate railing area. Takes quite a bit of time to do all that. You can just imagine how exciting it would be to see the royalty come out from that palace area into the city of Copenhagen, or of course them coming into it with all the horses. There's a big horse stable as you enter in the palace grounds to the right. Now, most of this today is a museum, and I don't know for sure, but I imagine it's still used for certain ceremonies. A beautiful park just as you enter into it. If you refer back to the photograph that I use as reference, you might notice that I took some of the branches of the tree off because I wanted to show the buildings in the background. Now I'm doing the strong edge for the bridge. Emphasize those beautiful curves going over the water. They're rather low. In fact, when our tour boat went through the middle one that I'm illustrating right now, everybody had to duck their heads because otherwise they'd hit their heads on the bridge itself. And of course, I'm referring to those people that were standing up on the boat to take videos. You know, when I do these videos, I start up the video and then I proceed to do the illustration. Then when I pause it, I go on to do something else, and then I come back to the illustration, work on it some more. And what happens sometimes, and you'll notice this later on in the illustration, is somehow I either forget to turn the recording unit on. So there we go. I got some detail in there. You didn't see me draw it because I forgot to turn the recording on camera. So you see me do the detail on the right part of the bridge, and there's some royalty image in the middle of all of that fancy framing decor on both of them. Sorry, I don't know exactly who it is. Probably the king and queen. So this bridge is all carved stone, and of course, like I say, it's just absolutely beautiful. And it's aged, so one of the reasons I use broken lines is to give it that aged appearance. On the top of these two, and I want to say them guard towers, and then I don't know if they actually were used for guards, probably. There's a beautiful sculpture piece. At the very top of the sculpture piece is this golden crown, but then on each corner of the top of this roof is a sculpture piece of a person. And actually included a photograph of that in a vignette of pictures that you hopefully noticed earlier. And I can't go into extreme detail on the illustration, otherwise it would be difficult to appreciate it at its distance. But anyway, I tried to give a feeling as to the people and what they were doing on the four corners with the crown at the top. It's almost as if they were climbing up to the crown. And the one on the right there that I'm illustrating now is actually holding a spear. Now what I'm doing is illustrating some of the distant wings of the palace. And there's these big trees that are pruned into large like walls. And you may notice those in some of the photographs I've taken. So that's what I was illustrating there, is these trees that are pruned with such precision like huge walls. So again, a lot of these walls were just carved rocks, the foundation. Really, it's so much more aesthetically pleasing than to see just a solid concrete wall. See these natural rocks. And of course, the weather and the water has aged them. But again, that just enhances the character. And of course, there's a lot of detail in the window frames. I'm putting the most detail in that one in the foreground, but as I go into the distance, as you can see, they're repeated going back on the building. I definitely can't put that much detail in. So I put in as much detail as I feel will be able to be work for the illustration. Now this part of the building is very interesting because they had a curved wall going around the corner. Some more windows on the side of that wing of the palace. Now I'm going to be putting in the reflection of the bridge and the shadow underneath the bridge in the water itself. When I first started this, part of the illustration of the water, of course I wanted the water to look very fluid and yet get it in little sparkles here and there of light reflecting in the water. I went back and forth on this until I got it exactly the way I wanted it to give the feeling of reflection, but not so many not so many reflections of water, of light, that it would hide the reflective feeling. So here I'm going out with the water and I'm getting a little bit more abstract as I go out and letting it flow. And then I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna darken up that area underneath because it's just too light. Leave certain areas glistening, but not so many. So I'm darkening it up a little bit. So one of the parts of the video that I lost was showing you the detail work I did in the buildings way in the distance. And I just did simple light lines for those because I didn't want them to look too close to the palace. There is quite a distance there. So I'm sorry you didn't get a chance to see that. I also outlined the trees a little bit stronger, but I'm not going to shade them in because I think that would also distract from the illustration. I'm not going to do any more detail on that. A little more work on the water, and I'm going to start working on the boats. And with regards to the boats, and I really like the way they curve and the lines work compositionally just to bring your eye back towards the palace. It's like they're all pointing in that direction. Some detail, but not to the extreme. Each one of these boats, I'm sure had a different function. I think most of them were like fishing boats, maybe a little recreation. Each one had a different character to it. Some of them were being worked on. They weren't totally in ship shape, so to speak. And then there's some abstract areas I have drawn in light lines around the boats, and that was like work areas, part of the dock for people working on the boat, or storing equipment for the boat. Some of the wood deck work I'm putting in. And in the back there was this big plastic tarp that was over part of the first boat, and so I want to do a little line work on that to show that it's plastic. I'm just sketching it a little rough there, make sure it shows up as finishing touches. There we go. So I finished the sketch, and I'm going to, of course, show that to you again on the canvas. You know, it's always a challenge when you're working on a sketch, especially something of this nature that has a lot of things going on it, everything from the boat and its detail, the dock and all the detail that's involved in that, the tree detail, the buildings in the background, and also the palace and the palace bridge. And you have to decide, where do I emphasize things with detail or line work? So, and this is a perfect example where I decided I want the bridge to stand out, I want the palace to stand out, the reflection in the water of the canal, but I don't want to overemphasize other elements like the tree, because if I did do that, then it would distract from the rest of the illustration. And even in the boats, if I went into too much detail in the boats, then that might distract. And the boats, in the way they were docked, even in the photograph, man, it turned out great in terms of the composition and the flowing of the eye going along the boat and back up to the palace and around like that. So it was a fun to do this illustration. I look forward to other illustrations I do in Europe. And the next process in this series on Copenhagen will be to do the color version of this, and that's the next video coming up. Now, for those of you that are interested in obtaining this original sketch or an ink reproduction of this that is on very good archival paper, you can go to my store on Etsy. But you know, sometimes I have a problem with people going to that store because they can't find it. And the best thing to do is to go to my website, which is called TravelnSketch.com. And at that point, you'll see both a button for my videos if you want to refer it to somebody else, and also a button for Etsy. And you just press on that button and you'll go directly to the store. And there you can, if you want, invest in either the original or some more archival print or prints there. And of course, once I finish the color, you can go see that too. Well, again, thank you so much for joining me on this travel and sketch adventure, and I hope you join me for some more of the adventures going throughout Europe. It's going to be an exciting time.